Bismillah, sir.
Assalamu alaikum and good evening. Today we are starting off with the seventh day of this second book narration. This second book is Choose Your WoW, a disciplined agile delivery handbook by Scott W. Ambler and Mark Lyons. On the sixth day, we started with chapter 5 and finished it. And then we started chapter 6, choosing the right life cycle, and we are continuing on with it. The very last topic we were going through was DAD's lean life cycle, and I would read out a little from the previous portion. DAD's lean life cycle, shown in figure 6.8, which we viewed yesterday, promotes lean principles such as minimizing work in progress, maximizing flow, a continuous streaming of work instead of fixed iterations, and reducing bottlenecks. This project-oriented life cycle is often adopted by teams who are new to Agile/Lean, who face rapidly changing stakeholder needs. A common issue for teams evolving, sustaining an existing legacy solution, and by traditional teams that don't want to take on the risk of the cultural and process disruption usually caused by Agile adaptation, at least not right now. There are several critical aspects to this life cycle. Team address work items one at a time. A major difference between lean and agile lifecycle is the lack of iterations. New work is pulled from the work item pool, one item at a time as a team has capacity, as opposed to the iteration-based approach where it is pulled into the team in small batches. Work time are prioritized just in time. Work items are maintained as a small options pool, often organized into categories by prioritization time. Some work items are prioritized by value and hopefully risk or a fixed delivery date. Some must be expedited, often a severity, one production problem or request from an important stakeholder, and some work is intangible, such as paying down technical debt on going on training. Prioritization is effectively performed on a JIT basis, with the team choosing the most important work item at the time when they pull it in to be worked on. Practices are performed when needed, as needed. As with work prioritization, other practices such as planning, holding demos, replenishing the work item pool, holding coordination meetings, making go-forward decisions, look at modeling, and many others are performed on a JIT basis. This tends to remove some of the overhead that teams experience with the agile life cycle, but requires more discipline to decide when to perform the various practices. Teams actively manage their workflow. Lean teams use a Kanban board to manage their work. A Kanban board depicts the team's high-level process in terms of state, with each column on the board representing a state such as needs a volunteer, being explored, waiting for dev, being built, waiting for test, being tested and done. Those were just examples. Because as teams choose their WoW, every team will develop a board that reflects their WoW. Kanban boards are often implemented on whiteboards or via agile management software. Work is depicted in form of tickets, stickies on the whiteboard, with a ticket being a work item from the option pool, backlog, or a subtask of a work item. Each column has a work in progress process limit that puts an upper limit on the number of tickets that may be in that state. As the team performs their work, they pull the corresponding tickets through the process on their Kanban board so as to coordinate their work. Explicit phases, milestones, and incoming workflows. There is still an inception phase and a transition phase, as well risk-based milestones to support consistent governance. Incoming workflows from other parts of the organization are shown just as with the agile life cycle. So you can have a look at this diagram. This is figure 6.8, that is DAD's lean life cycle. And what do we have here? Here we have the initial requirements, naturally coming the same way: envision the future, identify, prioritize and select projects, initial vision and funding, initial modeling, planning and organization. And this is actually becoming the initial requirement. And this initial requirement is divided into different options: business value, fixed delivery date, expedite, and intangible. So this is slightly different from what we had studied earlier, because here they've been classified in a different way, and they will be pulled, this task will be pulled in accordingly. Then work items are pulled when capacity is available to address them. Say in your daily work, the capacity is 3 tasks a day. So you will pull in 3 tickets and you will perform them. And as soon as 1 ticket is done, only then the 3rd ticket, a new ticket, would be taken up. At any one time, there will be only 3 tickets being worked on, work in progress. So the new features are built in, demo is conducted, new new WoW coordination meetings are happening, release solutions into production, and this all is happening in inception, construction, and transition phases. So the inception, construction, and transition phases are there, but the way of working has changed. Now in this case, it is DAD's lean life cycle. Then we have got DAD's continuous delivery lean life cycle. This is continuous delivery. This is slightly different. Lean life cycle shown in figure 6.9 is a natural progression from the lean life cycle. So it is a bit, additive to it. Teams typically evolve into a life cycle from either the lean life cycle or a continuous delivery. Agile life cycle, there are several critical aspects to this life cycle. Delivery of new functionality is truly continuous. Changes to the production are delivered several times a day by the team, although the functionality may not be turned on until it is needed. This is a DevOps strategy called feature toggles described in chapter 19. Automation and technical practices are key. This is similar to the continuous delivery agile life cycle. Inception and transition have disappeared from the diagram. This occurred for the same reasons they disappeared in the continuous delivery of agile. Explicit milestones and incoming workflows, once again similar to the continuous delivery agile life cycle. So outcome lead to continuous exploration. An interesting thing that we have observed is that when you capture work items as outcomes instead of as requirements, such as user stories, this life cycle tends to evolve into continuous exploration of stakeholder needs rather than the continuous order taking that we see with requirements driven strategies. So what do we have here? Here, as we discussed earlier, the cycle has been shortened, and we only concern ourselves with the construction part of it. Therefore, several other things, how the requirements are coming, have been eliminated from here. This is a continuous delivery cycle, and here it starts with the requirements, which are, as we said earlier, are in 4 categories, in 4 options: business value, fixed delivery date, expedite, and intangibles. And rest everything is working exactly in the same manner. So this is the continuous delivery lean life cycle. Then we have got DAD's exploratory life cycle. DAD's exploratory life cycle, shown in figure 6.10, is based on the lean startup principles advocated by Eric Rice. The philosophy of lean startup is to minimize upfront investment in developing new products, services, offerings in the marketplace in favor of small experiments. Rice. The idea is to run some experiment with potential customers to identify what they want just on actual usage, thereby increasing our chance of producing something they are actually interested in. This approach of running customer-faced experiments to explore user needs is an important design thinking strategy for exploring wicked problems in your domain. There are several critical aspects to this life cycle. This is a simplified scientific method. We come up with a hypothesis of what our customer want. We develop one or more minimal viable products, MVPs, which are deployed to a subset of potential customers. Then we observe and measure how they work with the MVPs. Based on the data we collect, we decide how we will go forward. Do we pivot and rethink our hypothesis? Do we rework one or more MVPs to run new experiments based on our improved understanding of customer needs? Do we discard one or more ideas? Do we forward with one or more ideas and productize them into real customer offerings? MVPs are prototypes at best. The MVPs we create are built hastily, often smoke and mirrors, or prototype quality code, of which the sole purpose is to test out a hypothesis. It is not the real thing, nor is it meant to be. It is a piece of functionality of service offering that we get out in front of our potential customers to see how they react to it. Figure 6.11 for an overview of MVPs and related concepts. Run several experiments in parallel. Ideally, this life cycle entails running several experiments in parallel to explore our hypothesis. This is an improvement over lean startup, which focus on a single experiment at a time. Although it is easier to run a single experiment at a time, it takes longer to get to a good idea, and worse yet, runs the risk of identifying a strategy before other options have been considered. So DAD exploratory life cycle starts with an initial idea, where the envisioning is done, hypothesis is created, and hypothesis results in a you build a little. MVPs are developed, they are deployed, they are observed and measured, and then the cycle continues by keeping it on. Maybe there is a pivot to the envision, and then again a new hypothesis, or we may even drop it. Or in case the idea has been proven, that goes to productize. Failed experiments are still successes. Some organizations are reluctant to run experiments because they are scared of failing, which is unfortunate because an exploratory approach such as this actually reduces your risk of product failure, which tend to be large, expensive, and embarrassing. Our advice to make it safe to fail, to recognize that when an experiment has a negative result, that this is actually a success because you have inexpensively learned what won't work, enabling you to refocus on looking for something that will. Follow another life cycle to build the real product. Once we have discovered one or more ideas that it appears will succeed in the market, we now need to build this real solution. We do this by following one of the other DAD life cycles. 6.11 figure, this is about exploring the terminology around MVPs, and it says MVP, minimal viable product, informs MMR, that is minimal marketable release, and MVP is informed by MMF, that is minimal marketable feature, and part of this minimal marketable feature is the MMR, minimal marketable release, and this minimal marketable release report informed back to MMF. The MMP, minimal marketable product, is basically included in the MMR, and that's how this cycle continues. A fully functional release of a product that represents the smallest possible feature set that address the current needs of your customer. And MMP is what? This is first release of an MMP used to shorten initial time to market. MMF is fully functional single feature or function that provides real value to end user, could potentially be deployed on its own. And MVP, minimum viable product, created to explore a hypothesis. Often a functional prototype where some functionality is simulated or performed manually. Your aim to do just enough work to get something in front of the potential users to learn what they really want. So you see, some of these minimal viable things are like, this is MVP is just a demonstration, simulation. MMP is actually the workable product, the end product, and then naturally the release and features and all that. We have seen several different flavors, or perhaps several different tailorings in a better way of looking at it over the years. exploration of a new offering. The most compelling reason, at least for us, is to apply for this life cycle to explore in ideas, an idea that your organization has for a new product. Then exploration of a new feature. At a smaller scale, the exploratory life cycle is effectively the strategy for running A/B test or split test, where you implement several versions of a new feature and run them in parallel to determine which one is most effective. Parallel proof of concept, POC. With a POC, you install and then evaluate a package, sometimes called a commercial off-the-shelf solution, COTS, within your environment. An effective way to describe risk of software acquisition is to run several POCs in parallel, one for each potential software package that you are considering, and compare the result to identify the best option available. This is often referred to as a bake-off. Strategy comparison. Some organizations, particularly ones in very competitive environments, will start up several teams initially to work on a product. Each team basically works through inception and perhaps even a bit of construction, the aim being to identify a vision for the product and prove out their architectural strategy. In this case, their work is more advanced than an MVP but less advanced than an MMR. Then after a period of time, they compare the work of the teams and pick the best approach. The winning team gets to move forward and become the product team. Then we have DAD's program lifecycle, that is for a team of teams. DAD's program lifecycle, shown in figure 6.12, describes how to organize a team of teams. Large agile teams are rare in practice, but they do happen. This is exactly the situation that scaling framework such as SAFe, LESS, and Nexus address. There are several critical aspects to this life cycle. There is an explicit inception phase. Like it or not, when team is new, we need to invest some upfront time getting organized. And this is particularly true for large teams. Given the additional risk we face, we should do so as quickly as possible, and the best way is to explicitly recognize that we need to do how we will go about doing so. Subteams, squads choose and then evolve their WoW. Subteams, sometimes referred to as squads, should be allowed to choose their own WoW, just like any other team would. This includes choosing their own life cycle as well as their own practices. To be clear, some teams may be following the Agile life cycle, some of the continuous delivery lean life cycle, and so on. We may choose to impose some constraints on the teams, such as following common guidance and common strategies around coordinating within the program, capturing for the coordinate activities process goal in chapter 23. As figure 6.13 implies, we will need to come to an agreement around how we will proceed with cross-team system integration and cross-team testing if needed, options for which are captured by the accelerated value delivery process goal, chapter 19, and the develop test strategy process goal, chapter 12, respectively. Where a framework such as SAFe would prescribe a strategy such as a release train to do this, DAD offers choices and helps you to pick the best strategy for your situation. Subteams can be feature teams or component teams. For years within the Agile community, there has been a debate around feature teams versus component teams. A feature team works vertical slices of functionality, implementing a story or addressing a change request from the user interface all the way through the database. A component team works on a specific aspect of a system, such as security functionality, transaction processing, or logging. Our experience is both types of teams have their place. They are applicable in certain contexts, but not others. And the strategies can and often are combined in practice. Coordination occurs at three levels. When we are coordinating between sub-teams, there are three issues we need to be concerned about: coordinating the work to be done, coordinating technical and architectural issues, and coordinating people issues. In figure 6.13, this coordination is effectively performed by the product owners, the architecture owners, and the team leads. The product owner of each sub-team will self-organize and address work requirements management issues among themselves, ensuring that each team is doing the appropriate work at the appropriate time. Similarly, the architecture ownership team will self-organize to evolve the architecture over time, and team leads will self-organize to manage people issues occurring across teams. The three leadership chief sub-teams are able to handle the type of small course correction that are typical over time. The team may find that they need to get together occasionally to plan out the next block of work. This is a technique that SAFE refers to as program increment PI. Planning and suggests that it occurs quarterly. We suggest that you do it when and if it makes sense. System integration and testing occurs in parallel. Figure 6.12 shows that there is a separate team to perform overall system integration and cross-team testing. Ideally, this work should be minimal and entirely automated in time. We frequently need a separate team at work, often due to lack of automation, but our goal should be to automate as team at first. Often due to lack of automation, but our goal should be to automate as much of this work as possible and push the rest into the sub-team. Having said that, we have found that usability testing across the product as a whole, and similarly user acceptance testing, requires a separate effort for logistical reasons. Sub-teams are as whole as they can be. The majority of the testing effort should occur within the sub-teams, just like it would on normal agile team, along with continuous integration CI and continuous deployment CD. We can deploy anytime we want. We prefer a CD approach to this. Although teams new to agile programs may start by releasing quarterly or even less often and then improve the release cadence over time, teams who are new to this will likely need a transition phase. Some people call this hardening sprints or deployment sprints the first few times. The accelerated value delivery process goal, chapter 19, captures various release options for delivery teams and the release management process blade for organizations as a whole. Our process blade encompasses a cohesive collection of process options such as practices and strategies that should be chosen and then applied in a context-sensitive manner. Each process blade addresses a specific capability such as finance, data management, reuse engineering, or procurement. Just like process goals are described using process goal diagrams, so are process blades. Scaling is hard. Some problems require a large team, but to succeed, you need to know what you are doing. If you are struggling with a small team agile, then you are not ready for large team agile. Furthermore, as we learned in chapter 3, team size is only one of 6 scaling factors that our team may need to contend with, the other being geographic distribution, domain complexity, technical complexity, organizational distribution, and regulatory compliance. We cover these issues in greater detail at Disciplined Agile Delivery. So here is the diagram 6.12 we have been referring a lot earlier. The DAD program life cycle. Here we can see we have got to coordinate the people, architecture, and work with the sub-teams. Work items are sent to the teams, sub-teams, and dependencies are established. Architecture strategy is sent and feedback is received. People direction is given and issues are reported. Right, this is the parallel development. So what is happening then? Integration and cross-team testing. Working builds are created and potential issues are reporting back, and consumer solution is sent to release solution in production, which then onwards go to operate and support solution in production. Ultimately, if there is a change request, that again goes back to the coordination. And while this is happening, we are basically being concerned with construction. And in construction, we are having sufficient functionality, production really ready, and delighted stakeholders. These are the advantages. And we started with a stakeholder vision and a proven architecture. So here also we are limited to the construction phase only. If you look at 6.13, a potential structure for organizing a large team of teams, in this we can see that there is a leadership team which consists of a program manager, public coordinator, who has product coordination, that is one team, product ownership, another team, and architecture ownership, another team. This is the leadership team. And then under that, we have individual DAD sub-teams, and you see from the product coordination we have a link to the team lead. From product ownership we have a team lead, sorry, we have a link to the product owner, and architecture ownership team we have a link with the architecture owner. And now these three guys are heading on top. We have got specialists in the team, we have our team members, and here we are producing components or features which are ultimately going to the consumable solution. And in the support cast, we have got technical experts, domain experts, independent testers, and integrators. When should we adopt each life cycle? Every team should choose its own life cycle, but how do we do that? It is tempting to have your portfolio management team make this choice. Well, at least it is for them. At best, they should make a hopefully solid suggestion when they first initiate an endeavor, but in the end, the choice of life cycle should be made by the team if you want to be effective. This can be a challenging choice, particularly for teams new to Agile and Lean. An important part of the process decision scaffolding provided by DAD is advice for choosing a life cycle, including the flowchart of figure 6.14. 6.14 of flowchart for choosing an initial life cycle. We start with, has someone else chosen the life cycle for you? Yes or no? If yes, convince them to allow you to choose your WoW. If not, then do you understand what customer wants? Yes and no. If no, go for the exploratory life cycle. If yes, is this a large program requiring a team of teams? If yes, go for program life cycle. Otherwise, if no, then ask another question. Is this being funded as a project? If yes, then is this low risk something you have done before? If yes, does the team have additional skills mindset? If no, then you go to, do you face rapidly changing requirements or priorities? Again, if yes, it is going for the lean life cycle. And if, is the team willing to accept potential disruption to their WoW? If yes, then it is agile life cycle. So you see, and if you come back to the decision, do you want to release often? If yes, do you need to release very frequently? If yes, continuous delivery. If not, then continuous delivery agile. So you can decide, looking at this chart, which specific life cycle are you going to be using. Even there is traditional life cycle also shown here, where does the team wants it to improve? Then if they do not want to improve, they can go for the traditional life cycle. Of course, there is a bit more to it than this flowchart. Figure 6.15 overviews that we have found to be important considerations from the software development context framework to be taken into account when selecting a life cycle. Constraining factors we keep in mind when choosing a delivery life cycle include team skills. The two continuous delivery life cycles require the team to have a lot of skill and discipline. The other DAD life cycles also require skill and discipline, although the two series life cycles stand out. With a traditional life cycle, you can get away with lower skilled people due to the hand-off oriented nature of traditional. You can staff each phase with narrowly skilled specialists. Having said that, we have seen many traditional teams with very skilled people on them. Team and organizational culture. Agile and continuous delivery life cycles require flexibility within the team and within the parts of the organization that the team interacts with. Lean strategies can be applied in organizations with a varying range of flexibility. Traditional can and often is applied in very rigid situations. The nature of the problem. The continuous delivery life cycles work very well when you can build and release in very small increments. The other DAD life cycles work very well in small increments. Traditional is really geared for big releases. Business constraints. The key issue here is stakeholder availability and willingness. Although financial oblique funding flexibility is also critical, the exploratory life cycle requires a flexible, customer-oriented, and experimental mindset on the part of the stakeholders. Agile, because it tends to release functionality in terms of complete features, also requires flexibility in the way that we interact with stakeholders. Surprisingly, the continuous delivery life cycles require less stakeholder flexibility due to being able to release functionality that is turned off, thereby providing greater control over when something is released by simply toggling it on. Figure 6.15 shows the selection factors for choosing a life cycle. So generally there is a key provided. A stands for Agile, CD colon A stands for Continuous Delivery Agile, and CDL is Continuous Delivery Lean, E for Exploratory, N for Lean, and T for Traditional. So from the team skills point of view, if the team skill is low, we can go for traditional, and as it increases, we move towards agile, lean, exploratory, continuous delivery agile, and continuous delivery lean. In case of team culture, the most rigid one is traditional, then is lean, then is agile, then is CDA, CDL, and exploratory is the most flexible one. From the point of view of organizational culture, again, the most rigid is T, L, A, CDA, CDL, and E. This is exactly the same as the team culture, except for the positioning might be a little right or left, but otherwise. Uh, from the nature of the problem point of view, uh, single single release, traditional is a single release, and decomposable, lean, exploratory, agile, CDA, and CDL. From the point of view of business constraints, again, the most rigid one is good for traditional, lean, CDL, CDA, and the most flexible one here is exploratory. The Evolve WoW Process Goals 24 chapter includes a decision point that covers the trade-offs associated with the 6 DAD life cycles plus a few others that are not explicitly supported by DAD, such as traditional. Different life cycles with common milestones. In many of the organizations that we have helped to adopt DA, the senior leadership and often middle management are very reluctant at first to allow delivery teams to choose their WoW. The challenge is that their traditional mindset often tells them that teams need to follow the same repeatable process so that senior leadership may oversee and guide them. There are two significant misconceptions with this mindset. First, we can have common governance across teams without enforcing a common process. A fundamental enabler of this is to adopt common risk-based, not artifact-based milestones across the life cycles. This is exactly what DAD does, and these common milestones are shown as figure 6.16. Second, repeatable outcomes are far more important than repeatable processes. Our stakeholders want us to spend their IT investment wisely. They want us to produce and evolve solutions that meet their actual needs. They want these solutions quickly. They want solutions that enable them to compete effectively in the marketplace. These are the types of outcomes that stakeholders would like to have over and over. That is, repeatedly. They really aren't that concerned with the processes that we follow to do this. For more on effective governance strategies for lean, agile lean teams, as see the govern delivery team process goal, chapter 27. Looking at figure 6.16, common mistakes across the life cycle. Okay, at inception, when we initiate the endeavor, we have got the stakeholder vision and proven architecture. In construction, we are doing the development of a potentially consumable solution. Continued viability is throughout the construction. And at the end of the construction, we have sufficient functionality. And at the end of the transition, we deploy the solution, production ready, and delighted stakeholders. Let's explore DAD risk-based milestone in a bit more detail. First, just look at the right hand. Explicit phases and governance make Agile more palatable to manage. Daniel Gagnon has been at the forefront of Agile practice and delivery for almost a decade in two of Canada's largest financial institutions. He had this to say about using DA as an overarching toolkit at both large financials that I have worked in. I set out to demonstrate the pragmatic advantages of using DA as a top of the house approach. Process tailoring is large, complex organizations clearly reveal the need for a large number of context specific implementations of the two, now 5 life cycles, and DA allows for a spectrum of possibilities that no other framework accommodates. However, we call this structured freedom as all choices are still governed by DA's application of inception, construction, and transition with lightweight risk-based milestones. These phases are familiar to PMO, which means that we aren't carrying out a frontal assault on their forfeited position, but rather introducing governance change in lean, iterative, and incremental fashion. Coming back, stakeholder vision. The aim of the inception phase is to spend a short yet sufficient amount of time, typically a few days to a few weeks, to gain stakeholder agreement that the initiative makes sense and should continue into the construction phase. By addressing each of the DAD inception goals, the delivery team will capture additional project information related to initial scope, technology, schedule, budget, risk, and other information, albeit in as simple a fashion as possible. This information is consolidated and presented to stakeholders as a vision statement as described by the developed common vision process goals, see chapter 13. The format of the vision and formality of review will vary according to your situation. A typical practice is to review a short set of slides with key stakeholders at the end of the inception phase to ensure that everyone is on the same page with regard to project intent and delivery approach. Second point is proven architecture. Early risk mitigation is a part of any good engineering as the proof architecture early process goal, see chapter 15, indicates there are several strategies you may choose to adopt, the most effective of which is to build an end-to-end skeleton of working code that implements technically risky business requirements. A key responsibility of DAD's architecture owner role is to identify risks during the inception phase. It is expected that these risks will have been reduced or eliminated by implementing related functionality somewhere between 1 and 3 iterations into the construction phase. As a result of applying this approach, early iteration reviews demos often show the ability of the solution to support non-functional requirements in addition to or instead of functional requirements. For this reason, it is important that architecture-savvy stakeholders are given the opportunity to participate in these milestone reviews. Continued viability. An optional milestone to include in your release schedule is related to project viability. At certain times during a project, stakeholders may request a checkpoint to ensure the team is working toward the vision agreed to as the end of inception. Scheduling these milestones ensures that stakeholders are aware of key dates wherein they should get together with the team to assess project status and agree to changes if necessary. These changes should include anything such as funding levels, team makeup, scope, risk assessment, or even potentially canceling the project. There could be several of these milestones on a long running project. However, instead of having this milestone review, the real solution is to release into production more often. Actual usage or lack thereof will provide a very clear indication of whether your solution is viable. Sufficient functionality. While it is worthwhile pursuing a goal of a consumable solution, what Scrum calls a potentially shippable increment at the end of each iteration, it is more common to require a number of iterations of construction, but before the teams has implemented enough functionality to reply. While this is sometimes referred to as a minimal viable product, this is not actually technically accurate, as classically an MVP is meant to test the viability of a product rather than an indication of minimal deployable functionality. The more accurate term to compare to this milestone would be minimum feature set or minimal marketable release. As figure 6.11 shows, an MMR will comprise one or more minimal marketable features, MMFs, and an MMF provides a positive outcome to the end user of our solution. An outcome may need to be implemented via several user stories. For example, searching for an item on an e-commerce system adds no value to an end user if they cannot also add the found items from their shopping cart. DAT's sufficient functionality milestone is reached at the end of the construction phase when MMR is available, plus the cost of transitioning the release to stakeholders is justified. As an example, while an increment of a consumable solution may be available with every 2-week iteration, it may take several weeks to actually deploy it in a high compliance environment. So the cost of deployment may not be justified under a greater amount of functionality is completed. In the meanwhile, there is the inbox MVPs versus MMR. Daniel Gagnon provides this advice. Think of an MVP as something the organization does for selfish interest reasons. It's all about learning, not about providing the customer with a fully fledged or sometimes even vaguely functional solution, whereas MMF is altruistic. It's all about the customer's needs. Production ready. Once sufficient functionality has been developed and tested, transition-related activities such as data conversions, final acceptance testing, production, and support-related documentation normally need to be completed. Ideally, much of the work has been done continuously during the construction phase as part of completing each increment of functionality. At some point, a decision needs to be made that the solution is ready for production, which is the purpose of this milestone. The two project-based lifecycle include a transition phase where the production ready milestone is typically implemented as a review. The two continuous delivery life cycles, on the other hand, have a fully automatic transition release activity where this milestone is addressed pragmatically. Typically, the solution must pass automated regression testing, and the automated analysis tool must determine that the solution is of sufficient quality. Delighted stakeholders. Governance bodies and other stakeholders obviously like to know when the initiative is officially over so that they can begin another release of direct funds elsewhere. The initiative doesn't end when the solution is deployed. With projects, there are often closeout activities such as training, deployment tuning, support handoffs, post-implementation reviews, or even warranty periods before the solution is considered completed. One of the principles of DA, see chapter 2, is delight customers, which suggests that satisfied customers is setting the bar too low. The implication is that we need to verify whether we have delighted our, our stakeholders, typically through collection and analysis of appropriate metrics. Life cycles are just starting points. DAD teams will often evolve from one life cycle to another. This is because DAD teams are always striving to optimize flow to improve their WoW as they learn through their experiences and through purposeful experiments. Figure 6.17 shows common evolution paths that we have seen teams go through. The times indicated in Figure 16 reflect our experiences when teams are supported by disciplined Agile training and certified disciplined Agile coaches. Without this, expect longer times and most likely higher total cost on average when helping a traditional team move to a more effective WoW. A common approach is to start with the Agile life cycle. There is a sink or swim approach that experience shows uh, can be very effective, but it can prove difficult in cultures that resist change. A second path shown in this diagram is to start traditional teams with a lean Kanban approach wherein the team starts with their existing WoW and evolves it over time via small changes into the lean life cycle. While this is less disruptive, it can result in a much slower rate of improvement since the teams often continue to work in a silo fashion with Kanban boards column depicting traditional specialties. Then we have in the box, life cycle evolution is a good thing. To be clear, we think Scrum is great and it is at the heart of our two agile life cycles. However, we have seen a growing backlash in the agile community against its perspective aspects. As we describe in our Introduction to Disciplined Agile Delivery book, in practice, we regularly see advanced Agile Scrum teams stepping out of the process waste in Scrum, such daily meeting, planning, estimation, and retrospectives as they lean up. The Scrum community is quick to ostracize such behavior as Scrum, but doing some Scrum, but not all of it. However, we see this is a nature evolution as the team replaces wasteful activities with added value delivery. The nature of these teams that naturally collaborate all day, every day, means that they don't need to perform such ceremonies on a deferred cadence, preferring to do these things when needed on a JIT basis. We think this is a good and natural thing. 6.17 is a common lifecycle evolution path. It says if your project is traditional 3 to 6 months, okay, you can convert it to agile into 3 to 6 months. A traditional 1 to 2 months to agile, 1 to 2 months to lean, and then 3 to 6 months to continuous delivery lean, 3 to 6 months to agile, and then 1 to 2 months to lean, 3 to 6 months to agile, and 1 to 2 months to lean, and then 1 to 2 months to continuous delivery lean. Similarly, 3 to 6 months to agile, 3 to 6 months continuous delivery agile, and ultimately continuous delivery lean in 1 to 2 months. What figure 6.17 doesn't show is where the program or exploratory lifecycle fits in. First, in some ways, it does apply to the program lifecycle. You can take an agile program approach similar to what scaling frameworks such as Nexus, Safe, and Less do in practice, where the program releases large increments on a regular cadence, say quarterly. You can also take a lean program approach where the subteams stream functionality into the production, and then at the program level, this is toggled on when it makes sense to do so. Secondly, the focus of the diagram is on full delivery life cycle, whereas the exploratory life cycle isn't a full delivery life cycle on its own. It is typically used to test out a hypothesis regarding a potential marketplace offering, and when the idea has been sufficiently fleshed out and it appears the product will succeed, then the team shifts into one of the delivery life cycles of figure 6.17. In that way, it replaces a good portion of the inception phase effort from the team. Another common scenario is that a team is in the middle of development and realizes that they have a new idea for a major feature that needs to be better explored before investing serious development effort into it. So the team will shift into the exploratory life cycle for as long as it takes to either flesh out the feature idea or disapprove its market viability. Then in summary, we have in this chapter we explored several key concepts. Some teams within your organization will still follow a traditional life cycle. DAD explicitly recognizes this but does not provide support for this shrinking category of work. DAD provides the scaffolding required for choosing between and then evolving 6 solution delivery life cycles, SDLCs, based on either agile or lean strategies. Project-based life cycle, even agile and lean ones, go through phases. Every life cycle has its advantages and disadvantages. Each team needs to pick the one that best reflects their context. Common risk-based milestones enable consistent governance. You don't need to force the same people on all of your team to be given to govern them. A team will start with a given life cycle and often evolve away from it as they continuously improve their work. This brings us to the end of chapter 6 and end of section 1 also. The next section we are going to be covering would be successful initiating your team. The aim of inception is for a team to do just enough work to get themselves organized and to come to a general agreement around the scope, architectural strategy, and plan for the current release. The average agile lean team spends on average 11 work days, so a bit more than 2 weeks in inception activities. This action is organized into following chapters. So we have got chapters 7 to 14, the numbering is wrong. 7 to 14. Okay, so chapter 7 is form teams, build and evolve an awesome team. Chapter 8 is align with enterprise direction, ensure the team understands and follows common roadmap guidance, explore scope, identify the potential scope for the current release of the solution. 10 is identify architectural strategy, identify an architectural strategy to provide the construction of the solution. Chapter 11, plan the release. Create a sufficient high-level release plan to guide the efforts of the team. Next chapter is develop test strategy, identify a test strategy that reflects the scope, architecture strategy, and risk-based by the team. Then 13 is develop common vision, developing a vision for what the team will accomplish for the current release of the solution. And chapter 14 is secure funding, and that is obtain funding for the team. And in the diagram we have here 3 people standing by the water cooler, 2 girls and one man. The blonde girl says, "Let's get started. We can't afford to wait." And the girl with black hair, "Actually, we can't afford to go in the wrong direction if we slow down now." And the man says, "We can go faster later." So I close today's session here because we have to start the next chapter, form team, which we will be undertaking in the next class. So today I announce the closure and completion of first complete section with 6 chapters. So part 1 of the book has been completed. So now we start the second part or the second section. So any questions till now? Anything which was not audible? Naturally, I am no scholar of this subject. I may not be able to answer all your questions. I can just take you there and we can read it again. But any comments from your side? Yes, Moses.
Sir, so far so good. Alhamdulillah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. And Arshad Saab?
Sir, all well, sir. With you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Let's call it a day. Thank you and take care. See you tomorrow, same time. Thank you and take care. Khuda Hafiz.
Thank you, sir. Allah Hafiz.
Khuda Hafiz.
Thank you, sir. Allah Hafiz. Good night.
See you.